Greetings, everybody. I'm Steve Messplay from Wildwood Guitars, and I'm hanging out with one of my favorite guitar players on this planet.
Wow.
And a good friend. This is Johnny A. Johnny, thanks so much. Johnny spent a couple days with us. He's played, I think, almost 30 Johnny A guitars.
Yeah.
Regaled us with incredible musicianship.
Yeah, great facility you got here. It's amazing. Amazing the amount of guitars. It's a candy store for me.
Yeah, it's
actually, bad.
It's
hard
not
good.
On all of us.
It's not good.
Yeah. Made a lot of strong men go weak here. So I was hoping you could share with our friends the story of the Johnny A guitar, how it came to be, what the inspiration was, the evolution of it. Maybe you can talk about how it came to fruition and maybe what the guitar does for you.
Well, it started from an association that I've had with Gibson for, I guess, going on 18 years now. I first contacted Gibson when I was working with Peter Wolf, as you know, from the Jay Giles Band. Right. I was his musical director for 7 years, and I just cold called Gibson one day, and I ended up speaking with Mike McGuire. They're a great guy. Turned out to be a close friend of mine now. And it was like, hey, you don't know who I am, but I'm working with this guy, and I love your guitarist, and I'm blah, 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 blah. Are you looking for any endorsees? So we just kind of struck it off right there. We hit it off really well, and I became an endorsee of Gibson. And really all that meant at the time was I wasn't getting free guitars. I was able to buy them at an artist cost, which was substantially lower than the stores, and I could deal with them direct, which was great. And then over the years, they started to kind of tailor. They got to know me, got to have a great relationship with Mike and Rick Gembar, who's the head over there, the GM. He's a great guy. And as they had confidence in me and my playing and kind of figured that I knew about guitars, and I knew the history of Gibson and the heritage and a lot of the line depth and things like that, I started to ask for certain things, my guitars to be tailored a certain way, the way my 335s were, my Les Pauls and stuff like that, and they started to do it, which was great. And then my solo career came along when I did my first record, the Sometime Tuesday Morning record in 2000. And I was looking for a kind of a different sound, and it was instrumental. It was driven by guitar. It was guitar music. And I was looking for a unique tone in a sea of guitar players trying to have a unique tone in a sea of guitar players. So, and there were guys that, had very signature sounds. Like you look at a guy like a Brian Setzer, it's a Gretsch thing, so I didn't want to use a Gretsch. Mm-hmm. You look at guys like Hendrix or something like that, or Stevie Ray Vaughan, it's very, Fender specific. So I was looking for something different, and I landed into this little music shop in Boston, where I'm from, and I found an ES-295, which people don't know what a 295 is. It's basically the shape of a 175, except the guitar is maple. It has P90 pickups, and it's all gold. It's the guitar that Scotty Moore used in the early days with Elvis.
Right.
So I recorded my first record. About 70% of that album was done with that ES-295 with flat wound strings. And then for the rest of the record, I used various Les Pauls, Firebirds, L5s, 335s, all Gibsons. And they were great. Loved them all. I started to play live, and I'd use the 295 for some things, the 335 for other things, and a Les Paul for other things. I'm kind of a small guy. I sit on a stool when I play. As you know, by being a guitar guru yourself, all these guitars have different ergonomics, different shapes, different size bodies, different neck sets, different neck angles. Everything's different. So when you're playing your 295 and you're sitting on a stool and the guitar is resting on your body, on your leg rather, because I don't wear a strap, it's a 16-inch body, and the neck set is in, and it's a 24 3/4 scale. But when you're playing the guitar, F is somewhere around here. And you're like this because the guitar is pretty thick. Then you put your 335 on, it's still a 16-inch body, right, but it's thin, and the neck set is at the 19th fret, so F is out here somewhere. and the Bigsby kind of ends up at the end of the bridge instead of between right, the two pickups. Then you put on a Les Paul, and that's a 13-inch body, so you're hunched over the guitar like this because it's lower on your body ergonomically, because obviously the center of gravity of that guitar is lower. So I don't like changing guitars. I like just using one guitar.
Yeah.
Call me boring.
Well, it interrupts the flow of a show, too, in a live setting. Yeah.
Well, some people like to see all the different guitars, but I don't know. I just get into this zone where I just like, going to the party with the girl I brought and going home with the same girl. So could be a different girl every night, but at least it's got to be the same girl all night long. So we were at a NAMM show, and then the record started to take off. I mean, that's when it got re-released on Steve Vai's label, and ended up having a #1 single on that record, and sold a lot of copies. Ended up in, Guitar Player, Guitar World, all the Tone Quest magazines, and all those magazines, Vintage Guitar. And I stopped using the 295 and the 335 at that point, and was using Les Pauls. I asked Mike if he would make me Les Pauls with Bigsby's 59s, which they weren't doing. They were, at the time, they were not making a 59 with a Bigsby, and they made me 3 with Bigsby's, and I was using them, and they were great. I mean, it's very, very hard to pick apart a Les Paul. I mean, it's just one of the greatest guitar designs that was ever made. It crosses a lot of barriers. It's a great blues guitar. It's a great jazz guitar. It's a great Motown guitar. It's a great rock guitar. So it's hard to diss the guitar.
Right.
But I could on one point. I got to the NAMM show, and Rick says to me, he's got the cigar, and he says, "Johnny, how's those Les Pauls working out for you?" And I said the same thing that I'm saying to you. It's very hard to diss that design. I said, and I love the guitars, and they are working great, except I'm missing the hollow tone from my 295. I said, I wish there was a way we could come up with, I'm getting everything I want except for the hollow tone. Yeah. So I said, I have some ideas and blah, 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 blah. And we started talking, and he said, well, I'd be interested in talking to you about, your ideas about a guitar. Maybe we can come up with a signature model. And like I said, the records were reacting, and the thing about it is I was using Gibson as the main sound, and it was an instrumental record, so Gibson was the voice of my sound, not unlike the olden days of Gibson when it was Les or Johnny Smith or Wes Montgomery or Herb Ellis or Tal Farlow or Hank Garland or these guys. So the instrumental type of music that I play is more in the tradition of those guys. I don't really play stuff that's like the shredding stuff, and there's nothing wrong with it. I love those guys. They're amazing, amazing players. But I kind of harken back to a time as guitarists, as vocalists, guys like Chet, Les Paul. So I'm not trying to do a throwback thing, but my music is kind of based in that type of time period. So the guitar voice is very essential to my interpretations and my arrangement and my production sense. So they said, hey, we'd like to talk to you about doing a signature model with some of the character that you're talking about. There was a prototype guitar that was basically laying around that wasn't doing nothing, was never going to see the light of day, and I happened to pick it up, and it kind of spoke to me, and it had some very unique qualities about it that I thought could work, but not in its incarnation, but I thought it was something that it was a jumping off point.
Right.
So I felt so strong about that guitar that I actually bought it from the custom shop. Paid a lot of money for that guitar. And I talked to Rick and I said, I think something like this could be a great guitar. It could be a modern classic, which was, I'm very much into Gibson's heritage and the golden years of their guitars, mid-50s, mid-60s guitars. Great guitars. Obviously, flat tops and jazz guitars before that were great guitars, but the guitars that I grew up with and that I have a romance with are all those mid-50s, early 60s guitars. So one thing that was essential for me was from an aesthetics, standpoint, that it looked like a guitar, appeared, felt, gave somebody the vibe of a guitar that could have came out from 59 to 61 or something like that. That was very important. And then the second thing is, and I didn't want the aesthetics to overshadow it, but it had to have functionality as a modern player that could do everything you needed it to do. So that was kind of the basis of what that guitar was. It had to be a hollow body. It had to get me the tones that I could get on something like Wichita Lineman, but then it would be able to scream like you can scream on a Les Paul or play heavy blues or rock blues. And so that was really the starting point of what that guitar was supposed to be. And then it went through a lot of visual and aesthetic things, and we worked with Matthew Klein on the dish to try to get a really nice looking 50s carve. And the neck profile, a lot of people, it says Johnny A custom neck profile. A lot of people don't know what that is. I based the profile of that neck on a friend of mine has a 1959 burst, a real burst. Mm-hmm. A lot of the historic collection bursts that you see, 59s, they kind of have a C or a U-shaped neck to them. A lot of the original bursts that I play didn't really have that shape. They had a flat back to them. Mm-hmm. And if you look at Gibson Les Pauls from 54 to 60, they started with that kind of clubby U-shaped canoe neck, and they ended up gradually flattening out the back to 60 where you got that slim taper. Mm-hmm. But a lot of the 59s that you feel have got the meaty shoulders. They just took the roundness out of the back and flattened it. My guitar style play, the way I play, is I anchor my thumb on the back. I'm not a guy that usually hooks my hand around the neck. So I like a flat back. It's a place to anchor my thumb. So that neck profile is based on a good friend of mine's original 59 burst. So that's the neck profile.
So when you and Mike were working on this, and Matthew and Rick, did it all come together at once? Has it been, when the Johnny A model was released, has it pretty much stayed in that incarnation?
Yeah, what was interesting is that I worked extremely closely with them. I mean, you can talk to Mike and Rick and they'll tell you that they never had an artist work on a guitar as much. See, because for me, it really, the idea of getting that opportunity for me was, first of all, was really scary because, you know, I'm looking at guys that were giants in the field of guitar. When you look at a guy like Johnny Smith or Wes or Chet or Les, I mean, these guys are giants. So to kind of think of having your name at the end of a Gibson guitar, that's an incredibly scary proposition, you know. So, but from an ego standpoint, that's not where the guitar came from me. For me, it was like I had a responsibility to try to create a guitar that continues on that history and that heritage and that legacy of these great guitars in the line. I just didn't want it to be some guitar that was painted with a special thing and have my name on the end. I you know, when I first got my first Les Paul, I bought a Les Paul when I switched from drums to guitar. And in 1969, it wasn't my first guitar, but it was the first guitar that I bought myself. No, that's not true either. I paid $88 for a Vox guitar when I was a kid, when I was 12. But this guitar, in 1969 or 69, I traded in my Gretsch drums at $90 for a Les Paul Deluxe. And it said Les Paul on the headstock. I had no idea who Les Paul was because I didn't realize, you know, Les Paul, Bing Crosby, that wasn't my music. Les Paul, it could have said, you know, Thunderdome on the headstock for all I knew what Les Paul meant. I thought it was French. You know,
well, we've had people come in our store asking if we have any of the Les Pauls.
Yeah. So to me, the name Johnny A in the headstock, I'm sure there was a lot of people when that guitar came out have no idea who I am because I'm not a household name like an Eric Clapton or a B.B. King or anything like that. But I did feel I had a responsibility to design a guitar that would supersede what my name is. Had nothing to do with my name, just a great guitar. So that was the responsibility there, and worked very, very closely with those guys. Was down there all the time, working on the carves of the neck, working on the dish, working on the binding layout, the inlays for the headstock, the overlay, the inlays on the neck, like I said, the profile, little things like the taper on the side of the headstock. You know, there's a lot of little elements on this guitar that I guarantee you people don't get. And they were from me being such a romantic on mid-60s, 50s guitars and seeing a lot of these elements that I think that great guitars, or great anything, not just guitars, but anything great really doesn't come out of one great idea. Usually it's a lot of little details that make something great. You start to water down those details and all of a sudden it doesn't become great anymore. And case in point, you can look at 80s Gibson guitars, and a lot of those details are gone, and they're just not good guitars. But when you know, Rick and, you know, Mike and those guys started the historic division and the custom shop, they started to make great guitars again. To the point where I don't really have any old guitars anymore. The only old guitars I have is I have a Gibson 1936 LOO that my wife and daughter got me for Christmas one year, and I have a 1967 Gretsch that my dad bought me when I was a kid. And those are all the old guitars are gone.
Well, we love the guitar. I mean, I think we've sold a couple hundred of your guitars.
Yeah, a great deal of them.
And we admire you and respect you tremendously as a musician and a person, but we don't embrace the guitar because it has your name on it. We think it's one of the greatest new creations in the entire guitar world in decades.
Oh, thanks.
It does everything that you just described. I mean, it's an incredibly versatile instrument with a beautiful soul and a great voice, and to hear you play them over the last couple of days has been very inspiring.
Oh, thanks.
Hopefully our listeners are getting the same inspiration out of it. And just thanks for coming. Thanks for sharing your music and your story and your life with us.
Yeah, it's great to be part
And
of
come back to
Wildwood
Colorado soon.
TV.
Yeah, it's been fun. Tune in again, everybody.
Thanks, folks.